I'm still alive. I'm doing science and I'm still alive. I feel fantastic and I'm still alive. While you're dying, I'll be still alive. And when you're dead, I will be still alive. Still alive. Still alive.
G'day. Well, this game needs little introduction. You would probably have to be a fairly reclusive gamer to have not heard of it. Portal. One of the most unique games to be produced in recent years, and a fan favourite across the board, appealing to a huge variety of gamers, many of which are not traditionally open to puzzle games, like the first-person shooter crowd for instance. Portal was originally released inside the orange box, packaged with gaming giants like Half-Life 2 and Team Fortress 2, but buried in this orange box was a true masterpiece in every sense of the word, a game that in many ways has outshined the main titles it was packaged with. It was included as a curiosity, as a bonus. I mean, in some ways it isn't even a true game, it's more like a tech demo. Portal was short, Portal was simple. Portal wasn't expected to do much of anything, and yet its reception was immediate and loud. People loved this game. I mean, Portal could very well be one of the most unique games released in recent years, and Valve had no real idea how it would be received. I think that Valve themselves were as surprised as anyone at just how much gamers jumped onto this puzzle game, a genre that is normally confined to the indie scene or the casual gamer market. Portal was the collective brainchild of a bunch of students at Digital Pen Institute of Technology. They were looking for something cool to bring to their end-of-year project and had been struggling with a problem a lot of game developer students have. For when you make a clone from an existing game, you're basically leaving all the game design decisions to the devs of the game that you're copying, which of course leads to a generic demo that fails to impress. What they came up with was something very different. Nabacular Drop. Now, anyone that has played Portal will immediately recognise the gameplay elements here. It has portals. It has continued momentum through the portals. It has moving platforms. I mean, in every way, it is exactly what it is. The precursor, the original idea that birthed Portal. Digital Pen runs a career day where they invite developers to come and see the work of the students, and Valve attended this event when these guys were showing off Nabacular. Needless to say, they were very impressed, and they asked the students to come to Valve and demo the game to the office. And while they were there, they offered them jobs and put them to work developing Nabacular into a AAA title. This just goes to show that the best way into the gaming industry is also the hardest. Invent something new. In many ways, the students were put into a corner of the building at Valve and given the Half-Life 2 engine and told, show us what you can do. Portal is in fact a Half-Life 2 mod. When you run Portal, if you tab out, you can see that it is the Half-Life 2 exe running the game itself. Valve was not ready to really push such a radical game concept at this stage, but the boys from DigiPen had produced something special and everyone at Valve knew it, even in this state as a mere mod. The orange box was coming, and Valve saw this as a great opportunity to test the waters, so to speak, to see how the public would react to such a game. So they polished the mod up and released it, even though it was incredibly short, not far from a demo really. But man, it was sweet. Now Portal 2 is out. The guys from DigiPen, now fully fledged Valve devs, already know it's going to be a hit even before they started making it, and man, they have gone to town on it, expanding nearly all aspects of its gameplay. You still have the portals, you still have the buttons and the boxes, but you now have light bridges, bounce gels, speed gels, refractive laser prisms, and even an advanced co-op mode that very well may be the best thing I have ever played. I mean, puzzle games are almost universally solo experiences, so along with all the improvements of Portal 1, Portal 2 has again defied all odds and broken into brand new ground. I feel Portal 2 is the game the designers originally wanted to make. In fact, I doubt they have ever really stopped thinking about this game, and that care and thought really shows in Portal 2. Probably the most interesting thing about the Portal games are the portals themselves. Well, yeah, I know that sounds silly, but just wait. Unless you're a 3D engine developer, you may not know that there is a type of 3D engine called a portal engine. and the Source engine, which is the name Valve gave to their engine. And it is the Source engine that is used in Half-Life, Team Fortress 2, Left 4 Dead, pretty much all their 3D titles, was at the time of Half-Life 2 and Team Fortress 2 using Portal rendering, along with some other tricks like, for example, binary space partitioning. You see, if a 3D engine has to render the entire game world all the time at any given time, performance becomes a real problem, for it is simply too processor heavy to render such large areas all at once. Because unless the engine itself is in some way instructed, it will physically render everything in the entire game world, even if it is not visible to the player. This is why 3D engines until recently have never had large outdoor environments and were confined to corridors and mazes. One of the ways to combat this problem was the invention of the Portal engine. Not the engine used to make Portal, but the type of engine called a Portal engine. How this worked was to separate the environments during map creation into sections, each section containing only the polygons needed for that section. So it's completely separate from the rest of the map and therefore from the rendering process. These sections were linked by what were called portals, a seamless transition from one section to the next. So when in your favourite retro first-person 3D shooter you ran down that corridor and jumped into an air vent, the air vent complex itself in the map creation process may not have been attached physically or even in the same adjacent location as the player experienced it. You have in fact passed through a portal, which has teleported you without your knowledge from one section to another into a completely separate area. This is one of the reasons when 3D games came out, the real-time map disappeared, which was available in almost all the 2D engines, because the actual physical layout of the map looked nothing like what the player experienced because you were getting teleported all over the place as a way to minimize processor expenditure. This was, and still is, a function that is very commonly used as a way of managing game engine performance, even in some engines today. The Source engine, as with all real-time engines, has come a long way in the 7 years from Half-Life 2. Now all sorts of incredibly complex techniques exist to increase performance. Umbra is a particularly cool system for object occlusion culling, which basically means that if you cannot physically see it, as if the game player or the game camera cannot physically see the polygon, then it's not rendered and completely ignored. And this was used in games like Mass Effect 3, Dragon Age 2, and the upcoming Guild Wars. The list of AAA titles goes on, though way back in the day, we didn't have these kind of techniques, and what they used were portal engines, or one of the things they used were portal engines. All Nabacula was, and the Portal games for that matter, is an exploitation of a hidden engine function that has been brought from behind the curtains into the gameplay itself by allowing the player to add the in and out points of these portals in real time. It is really a stroke of genius. As I said, this was at the time, a universal 3D engine function. So every single developer using 3D engines would have been using portals and seeing them in their dev process. But no one else made this connection. This isn't to say that there were some very tricky problems that had to be overcome to bring this type of gameplay around. Namely, the gravity and the way the physics engines worked. They had to be able to flip upside down, all in real time, and do a lot of really strange stuff, because physics engines are designed to mimic the physical world, and portals are just so unreal that that was a real challenge to get working. But Portal and Portal 2 has more going for it than simply unique gameplay. It has Gladius, possibly one of the funniest villains in computer game history. It is really hard to describe exactly how endearing this character is. Portal also has a very unique look that came directly from the game design, from the simplification of the environments to make them less confusing to players. And on top of that, it has a simply fantastic soundtrack, something that Portal 2 has continued and expanded upon in all areas. Yet Portal 2 has something unique to itself, and that is co-op play. where you play with a friend on a second set of unique levels that is completely separate from the single player missions. With inbuilt voice comms or the intuitive radial interface for setting marks on the map, combined with such relaxed, fun gameplay which stimulates the mind, makes playing co-op in Portal 2 one of the best game experiences created to date for us non-action orientated gamers. With the addition of a second player, you of course have 2 more portals, which just brings the complexity of the puzzles up another notch, plus the interface system for non-verbal communication for when dealing with randoms, or using the extremely good voice comms that exist today, really makes the 2-player co-op the highlight of the entire game. And what really makes it fascinating for me is that as a puzzle game player, who basically all I play are adventure games and puzzle games, which are almost solely solo experiences. Being able to work on puzzles together and talk about puzzles and, solve them with another human being is just an extremely refreshing and enjoyable way to play a game. The only problem with this is, of course, is that once you solve the puzzles, there is absolutely no replay value at all in any of the Portal games, unless you play it years later when you've forgotten, especially with the co-op. And the reason for this is that once you've solved the puzzle, you've solved the puzzle. And if you're playing co-op and one person knows the puzzle and one person doesn't know the puzzle, then one player is going to be frustrated because he knows all the solutions and will be just constantly slowed down by the other player. And the other player is going to be frustrated because he's never actually going to get a chance to do any puzzle solving because he's just along for the ride, basically. Even so, Portal 2 will have some longevity. We know there's going to be a modding scene. We know that Valve is going to be fairly active with releasing DLC, and most likely free DLC at that. And even something as simple as adding achievements to Steam that give you achievements based on how quickly you do a zone will make people want to come back and play. But you are really playing this the same way you play an adventure game. Because of course once you solve Gabriel Knights, you've solved Gabriel Knights, but that doesn't stop people from replaying it, because the actual experience is so enjoyable. And Portal 2 and Portal 1 both have these. They are great gameplay experiences. And if you've played Portal 1, do not worry, as Portal 2 has a lot of new stuff in it besides just the co-op play. And where did Valve go to find this innovation? Why, back to Digital Pen. This time hiring the students and co-opting their ideas from another project called Tag the Power of Paint. These guys basically introduced the concept of gels to Portal 2, and a welcome addition it is. And here you can see that just like Nubacula and Portal, the gels and tag are exactly the same concept. There are a few minor flaws in this game though. There is a lack of ramping in the difficulty of this game that makes you finish Portal with the feeling that it never really got started. You never feel like you are beyond the tutorial phase. It never has that feeling of, okay, I have all my tools and I know how the puzzle works, I know how the gameplay works. Bring it on. Give me my first of the real puzzles. Give me a real puzzle. I mean, you'll find that most of the time when you're stuck in Portal, it is not that the puzzle is hard, but because you just haven't looked in the correct direction to see that there is a portable surface that you have missed. Meaning that once you see the portal surface is on the roof or something, the puzzle is instantly solvable. Now I think Valve has done this on purpose, as there is a very deeply driven story-based game here, and they wanted to keep a continuing momentum to keep the story running, and not bogging us down in puzzle box style gameplay where you get stuck in a single room for a long period of time. Now, do not get me wrong, Portal 2 is a fantastic game, and this story-based environment that it is in is very enjoyable and a real experience to play. But for puzzle gamers like myself, it really seems that it has forgotten its roots, the roots of Portal 1, which is one of the few perfect games ever made, where everything is just, sublime. And I came out of Portal 2 kind of wishing it was much more simple, and it was just puzzle room after puzzle room after puzzle room. Which, by the way, is exactly what the far more enjoyable co-op gameplay is. A pure puzzle game. As for the story, it is told superbly and is completely coherent and beautifully executed and acted. Still, there is a single gripe here as well. Portal 1 was a bonus in the orange box, and in fact takes place inside the Half-Life 2 universe. So while the story of Portal 2 chugs along perfectly well, you'll find that unless you are a Half-Life 2 player, then some of the most basic questions about the story's setting are never even discussed. This, coupled with the difficulty level, adds to the feeling that Portal 2 just stopped, just as it was getting really good. I mean, for someone who hasn't played Half-Life 2, you may find yourself at the end of this game with many unanswered questions, and just a brief conversation with a Half-Life 2 fan will just fill your head with these really cool, interesting backstory that were not even hinted at in Portal 2. Still, these are minor flaws, because what Portal 1 had especially, but Portal 2 also does have, is just amazing sense of humour and amazing gameplay, and is just a real beautiful experience to play. I mean, I think Portal 2 is probably the best game to be released in recent years. And, well, you know, Portal 1 is really, you know, just one of those games that only comes along once a decade or something. I really can't recommend Portal and Portal 2 enough. They are a simple must-play for any gamer. Thanks for watching.
This was a triumph. I'm making a note here, huge success. It's hard to overstate my satisfaction. Aperture Science. We do what we must because we can. For the good of all of us, except the ones who are dead. But there's no sense crying over every mistake. You just keep on trying till you run out of cake. And the science gets done and you make a neat gun for the people who are still alive. I'm not even angry. I'm being so sincere right now. Even though you broke my heart and killed me and tore me to pieces and threw every piece into a fire. As they burned, it hurt because I was so happy for you. Now these points of data make a beautiful line, and we're out of data, we're releasing on time. So I'm glad I got burned. Think of all the things we learned for the people who are still alive. Go ahead and leave me. I think I'd prefer to stay inside. Maybe you'll find someone else to help you. Maybe Black Mesa.